Hi everybody, welcome back to 30 Days Until Done. Today we're talking about images. We're still in our content section for poetry and revision of poetry, and we're thinking about images. Okay, so on day one we asked, what is a poem? Right, this was on January 1st. If you haven't seen that, go back, and it's a 9-minute video, I think. Go back and take a look at that. We talked about what is a poem, and the definition I gave was that a poem is it's when your words have greater meaning than the words would by themselves, right? It goes beyond the definition. It has something inside us is emotionally lifted by this thing, and we understand it in a more complex way than we can intellectually, right? Now, here's the problem. If you start to summarize things, if you start to explain things, right, then you will lose the power of the poem. It no longer becomes a poem. It becomes an essay shaped like a poem, and it becomes very unsatisfying. And very often you'll see people summarizing meanings right at the end of poems. We call this fear of the end of the page. People are often terrified by the end of the page. They see it coming and they say, "Oh crap, I've got to finish my poem." Ugh. Well, that's why I did this, right? And suddenly you've lost the entire power of that poem. The image is how to avoid that. And most of the time when you're writing a poem, you're just going to have image after image after image after image, and that this is going to mean something far more complex than it could possibly mean if we simply explained it, right? If all we do is explain it, then there's not much going on there at all, right? Okay, so now what do I mean by this? What could I say? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to try to identify these poems in which you are explaining things, right? Where you're afraid of the end of the page. And we're going to try to work through this and create images. Now, what kind of images? Well, they should probably be fresh, because if they're not fresh, then they have no meaning. What do I mean by this? I mean, like the cliche, cool as the other side of the pillow. You ever hear cool as the other side of the pillow? Or cool as a cucumber? That's a really powerful, it's not an image, it's a touch sensation. But it's very powerful the first time you hear it, because you think to yourself, cucumbers, they're kind of cool. And this thing also, right, and we've got this metaphor that's based on a really strong, profound sensory thing. And it's powerful. The second time you hear it, though, you've heard it before, and it no longer has that power to stop and evoke, right? And so instead of you going, oh wow, that's it, you just read through it, and really all you've done is you might as well have just said cool, because you read it as though it's cool. You just skip over those words, and suddenly we're concentrating on words that don't really have any new meaning. So the images have to be fresh, right? Whatever that is. It doesn't have to be metaphorical either, but it should be fresh. So I write about the forest a lot of the time. And okay, so a lot of people have written about the giant sequoia tree. And it's a very difficult thing to write about. So what in the world do you write about? Well, I like to write about the texture of it. I can only do it once or twice, right? After that, I don't know if you've ever touched a giant sequoia tree, but it looks like it's going to be, trees, you know, they're hard, they're made out of wood. Sequoia trees aren't. You watch up and it's like, walk up and touch it, it's like a sponge. And that's only the first 3 feet, but you really don't get beyond the first 3 feet. You just kind of, it sponges in. It's insulation, it's the world's best insulation. And it's a very interesting sensation. And having that person touch it is a good one. Often putting a person interacting with something like that is good, especially an interesting person. So who would be an interesting person? Here's a fresh image. Let's put a 90-year-old woman who has never seen a sequoia tree experience it. She's probably experienced pretty much everything else there is to experience in life. And let's put her with her cane in her nice Sunday dress. She's up there being fascinated by this tree, learning something new for possibly the last time in her life. And how does she react to that? Okay, now that's a new image, right? And that would be a fantastic way to stop a poem. Be a fantastic way. It's that kind of thing. Let's take a look at explanation. Let's look for summary in our poem. Take it out and put an image instead. And so nothing is summarized, nothing is explained, everything is poetic. Okay, and you can even just do a section of that and put it down below. When you're done, put it down below, and we'll talk about how we can make this image more fresh. We're going to try to be as critical as possible with each other. So yes, it's nice that you're doing good things, but let's say, is there farther you can go with this? What part of this could really develop this beyond wherever it is? we are. Okay, so that is January 5th on 30 Days Until Dawn, and I'll see you tomorrow.